Thank you again for joining us today for Keep Documents Where They Belong, extending ServiceNow with SharePoint the right way. You who are not familiar with DTech apps, just a real quick who we are in one slide. DTech Apps is a long-standing partner of ServiceNow. Years ago, we were asked by ServiceNow to release one of the first apps made available on the ServiceNow store, Tasker, and in the development of that app, capabilities around it, and including with that DocIntegrator, which is one of the solutions we'll go into a little deeper today as we talk about your SharePoint integration. And within DocIntegrator, it's got multiple capabilities that you may have heard of or can become familiar with, DocGenerator and DocFlow. Tons of resources on the website to go in deeper on these, as well as videos on our YouTube channel to learn more about these great products. But for what we're talking about today, we're talking about the middle block there, DocIntegrator, and bringing content management and working with SharePoint into your ServiceNow environment. One of the biggest challenges that many of you, either platform owners or IT executives, face today is this efficiency gap. Many of you are either using SharePoint and ServiceNow separately, or you have some integration, but it just doesn't deliver. You have people who routinely are bouncing between tabs to find relevant files. Maybe they're even bouncing between applications. Maybe you're still having to use Band-Aid techniques like sending files through email. Maybe it's you're caught in that copy-paste trap where you're dropping in links that will frequently break, especially as versions change of files. And then, of course, like I said, there is that version chaos, multiple copies of the same file, multiple copies with varying names, but it's still the same file. So we come into this world of file governance and management that really becomes an issue. What ServiceNow has done and has been doing is they've always provided or tried to work in some way with third parties like Microsoft to give some sort of capability to their customers. And while those capabilities have been good and they've made some strides in different areas, they scrape the surface, and partners like DTech Apps, we come in and we go deep. So while they have a tool now and they've sort of gone into what's called external content connector platform, it's an exceptional tool when it comes to trying to integrate certain parts of SharePoint in there to work with certain their AI-powered search. But like it says, it makes SharePoint findable, but it really doesn't make it actionable within the ServiceNow platform. And so what we want to do is we've got tons of customers who are striving to go deep, to get full integration with those files. They want to be able to make sure that nothing's being indexed within the platform. They're very much concerned about confidentiality and file security. And so that's where DocIntegrator comes in. We go deep. We go very deep within the SharePoint platform, providing exceptional capabilities that otherwise you don't get from custom coding. So as we go through, what are some of those quantifiable results? Well, first of all, when you have a single pane of glass in ServiceNow where you eliminate that switching, and even more so, any sort of manual filing and hunting and pecking for any of those files, you start reducing errors immediately into how things are being done. I mean, it's not just increasing efficiency. What's happening with the integration is we're freeing up personnel to do more important work than what they spend their time doing when they're trying to find the right file, the right version. And there are some great capabilities when you have a better search feature, but it really doesn't solve the root problem, right? We don't give up potato chips and still eat 5 meals a day to lose weight. We make strides to change our daily habits in order to see true efficiency, and that's what we're seeing here. We talked a little bit more about solving this attachment sprawl. The key thing here is when we move away from what we call attachment sprawl, we immediately worrying about people downloading files they shouldn't be onto their desktop. We address certain security concerns, and we also increase the time to speed at which some of these processes get through. And so more than that, by keeping things in SharePoint properly, We're also not having to use other repositories for our files. We're not needing to store things inside of ServiceNow, which come with great features, but many limitations and definitely cost considerations that make it somewhat prohibitive to many organizations, especially as we get to some of the large enterprises and government organizations that are putting in large, massive confidential files and trying to move them through ServiceNow workflows. So storing and archiving in SharePoint is the most cost-effective and the best way to store your files and eliminate any sort of redundant storage between platforms. If you have issues like that today, we can help you even address if you've got files in multiple repositories. We actually have a team here that routinely, when we go through and start setting up the software, will provide the service to help you maximize your infrastructure so that you have all your documents where they belong. So that when you start with DocIntegrator and you start with a clean environment working between ServiceNow and SharePoint, you start off on the right foot. So let's go into why we want to maintain SharePoint as a system of record. First and foremost, many of you are joining us today are in a highly regulated space, whether that involves confidential information about an employee or a vendor, or you have other secure data in files and content that you need to ensure is being backed up by something like Microsoft's strict security protocols when it comes to document management. You might be joining us today because you're having versioning issues, and in SharePoint you've got, when it comes to maintaining content records, you can easily control versions. You can revert back and find your versioning right within the SharePoint platform. And then, of course, we've talked about it before, being able to store your files in a document repository that largely has no restrictions and is incredibly cost effective. So as we demo here with this one little slide, I just want to go into what's the advantage here with DocIntegrator, not just the native synergy by building in what you're about to see now is an interface that looks exactly like ServiceNow, but you will be working with your files in SharePoint. The most secure way to do this, and more importantly, I think for you, commercial off-the-shelf software. We are not a service, although we have a services wing. We are a package that you get installed right on your native ServiceNow environment, and it makes integrating with your current system of record, which is SharePoint, seamless and perfect. So for many of you who are in a world of custom apps, going over to COTS is a requirement based on the current way the world is looking at software today, and that's a good thing. Because with COTS software, there's so many things that the vendor takes on that DTech Apps does for you to ensure that your apps are always compliant and always working with the latest and greatest, as well as the oldest versions of software you may have. With that, let's pass the microphone back over to my colleague, Josh White, our solutions consultant. And Josh, I'll let you dive right into the demo.
Let's actually hop in and see DocIntegrator in action in an actual ServiceNow environment. So a couple things I want to show you guys. Don't have too much time, so I'll try to get through it all. First of all, why DocIntegrator? This is how we'll answer that question, is actually looking at the ServiceNow platform. So the first key part of DocIntegrator is that it is quickly and easily embedded into any ServiceNow application. Within just a few minutes, a user can configure DocIntegrator to show up as a tab from virtually any ServiceNow view. For an example, I'm here logged into the CSM workspace as an agent who's helping out a customer. And this is that standard workspace view with all the customer and case details. But I also need a few documents here to actually resolve this case to do my work. And if I'm not using DocIntegrator and I want to house these documents as ServiceNow attachments, as I do here, I run into a few problems. One, and DC touched on this a bit, but search can only be done over other attachments. If we're talking attachments specifically, there is that external search with the WDF and XCC, but even if I can find these files, which aren't attachments, it's also not actionable. And two, if I need to edit the document, I would have to click into the actual attachment, I'd have to download it, I'd have to edit it on my desktop app and re-upload the new document and delete the old attachment. There's no versioning to make sure I know that I'm working on the most up-to-date document. And this also makes it very difficult to co-edit documents with someone else. If we're both downloading and working on our desktop, neither of us can see what the other is doing, and we are most likely unnecessarily overlapping work. So let's actually look at DocIntegrator. We just hop into this tab here, which I've named SharePoint Documents, but this name can be configured to whatever your organization needs. And as you can see, we're still in the workspace, and we've kept the UI simple and familiar. We're now in DocIntegrator, though, which has surfaced SharePoint documents important to the ServiceNow record in the UI without actually bringing those documents into ServiceNow itself. And here we also pull SharePoint metadata. So whether that's one of the hundreds of out-of-the-box columns or a custom column created for a specific use case or data type, we pull that metadata and organizations get to decide and configure what important columns they need for quick visibility on this view. Or, of course, they can just keep it out of the box with columns like we see here. Now let's take a look at one of these files. Say I need to co-edit this customer handling document here with another agent. It's really as simple as clicking the name of the file here, and I'll just expand this into the full view here and edit this document. And see, we're brought to the document in SharePoint. Now, if you're familiar with SharePoint Online or Word Online, you have that full functionality here. So I can make any edits that I need to. I can add a comment to this document. I can look at versioning and changes and the catch-up feature on changes that were made to the document as well, all in real time. And I can do any collaboration and edits with my peers, making sure we're always on the newest version and are not doubling up on that work. And of course, we always have to talk about AI at least a bit in any type of technology conversation. And DocIntegrator lets organizations leverage their existing AI licenses. So we're not bringing one specific one to the table and saying you have to do this. For instance, many companies have Copilot licenses as packaged with Office or other Microsoft products, and you can use that Copilot functionality in this view for things like summarizations, insights. We can bring out this panel here, and we can even ask it questions about the document, further saving us time and getting us use out of these licenses that we own. So there's no more changing a bunch of tabs and switching in and out of different systems. With just a click, DocIntegrator allows users to get the best of both ServiceNow and SharePoint, maximizing their value. We use ServiceNow for its great front end and workflow abilities, and it uses SharePoint for its robust document management, security, and collaborative functionality. And if I go back to the CSM workspace here, let's take a look at another use case that our customers see a lot of value in, and that's digitally signing documents. So many organizations pay for expensive enterprise signing solutions such as DocuSign or Adobe Pro, but we've actually been able to help some get out of those hefty investments and simply utilize a free signing solution like Adobe Reader by leveraging DocIntegrator. So if I need to sign this document, it's as simple as right-clicking and opening in my desktop app, where we open it here. Now, to be clear here, we are not downloading the document to our desktop. We're just using SharePoint and OneDrive to keep the document in SharePoint, allowing us to digitally sign in place. So once we've opened Adobe, I can just go ahead and add my digital signature here, make the update to the file, and again, without ever leaving SharePoint. And for anyone on the line who is in the federal space, this does allow for the use of PIV or CAT credentials, which some of our customers are using today. And update, we can simply just close out, and now the new updated version of that document will be held within this record for anyone collaborating or viewing this record. They can view that document themselves. Now, next, I'm going to switch over to a more standard platform view of ServiceNow. So ServiceNow has, as some of you may know, made a big push towards workspaces, but organizations often are still working in the back-end platform view that you see here. Point being, though, the DocIntegrator is easily inserted across ServiceNow no matter the type of view. So here we're looking at a project within the SPM application. But again, as I mentioned earlier, this could be any module within ServiceNow. It could be ITSM, ITOM, legal service delivery, and even custom built applications as well. DocIntegrator embeds as a tab within any ServiceNow record, and we encourage our customers to embed in every part of ServiceNow that they use. We don't have particular licenses for different models or different modules. It's a one-size-fits-all license across the ServiceNow ecosystem. And just like before, attached to this record, if I scroll down a bit here, we can see the tabs on the record, and here we've embedded DocIntegrator as a project documents section. And again, we've kept the same UI look and feel so that users might not even realize that they are using SharePoint. To them, it just seems like everything is right here in ServiceNow where they do their work. And this is another way we can actually of ServiceNow without needing to invest in, say, ServiceNow fulfiller licenses. So if I need to collaborate on a document for this project with someone who does not have a project fulfiller license, instead of needing to give them the license, they can still access the record and read the information, and then they can use DocIntegrator to co-edit the document or sign a document without needing editing or writing permissions from within ServiceNow. And something else that we can do is upload documents directly to SharePoint from ServiceNow with DocIntegrator. So instead of jumping tabs into SharePoint, signing again, finding where I need to upload, etc., I can say in ServiceNow where I work, and I can just click that upload button there and be brought to our upload page here. And I can select, let's just say, a local file that I have, and seamlessly upload it into SharePoint, bypassing ServiceNow, but being held within this record and tied to this record thanks to DocIntegrator. And DocIntegrator also has an advanced search functionality. So if I click the search icon here, I'm brought to DocIntegrator's federated search. Here we can quickly search the content of all files within our SharePoint and that the user has permissions for, of course. And we can search other sources, Teams messages, or the ServiceNow knowledge base, which again, we would need permissions to as a user. We're not going around security access. It's all controlled by users' existing permissions. And so if I need a specific document, like an update approval form, I'll just say update approval here and make that search. Here, we're actually utilizing that SharePoint search, and we quickly get the relevant files. If I need this document for further work, I can link it, or I can copy the document right to the service we are working on. Or if not, I can just click onto the document and we'll be taken to it from within SharePoint here. And we'll move back here, and then we would see that document, if I did link it or copy it, attached to this record. All right, so the final portion of DocIntegrator I want to show is DocFlow. Don't have too much time here, so I'm going to try to be quick. But DocFlow is our document routing automation solution, which is included with DocIntegrator. So everything that you've seen today, including what I'm about to show, is included with DocIntegrator. Basically, the background for that is we've noticed that many organizations have these fixed behind-the-scene processes for filling out forms, including signatures, reviews, and approvals. And we've taken that need and developed a tool that automates this process, and it gives organizations an auditable, repeatable, and prescriptive method for carrying out common form processes. And DocFlow helps by working in tandem with ServiceNow to build out an easy to configure and maintain solution for automating these flows. So I'll go ahead and start in the ServiceNow Employee Center, but it's important to note that DocFlow can be leveraged across the platform, including the base service portal and the platform view. Now, we've already worked with a few organizations to help them automate certain standardized forms, including a system access request form, which I think would be a great example to show you all. DocFlow is perfect for these kinds of forms because it keeps them secure, it reduces errors, it keeps them in SharePoint, of course, and can be replicated for the many forms used across an organization. So if I need to kick off this form, I'll just navigate to the service catalog here, and we can see a few different forms that we have created for customers, and I'll find the one that I need, which is the system access request form. Now, before DocFlow, I'd have to search across my computer, right, and repositories for the form. I'd have to confirm it's in its correct version. I'd have to fill it out field by field manually, and then send out emails having to keep track of required approval or review parties. And I need to make sure everyone does their steps in the there's no guard rails or clear audit trail. If there's a slight issue, I'd have to start it all over again. But with DocFlow, it's as simple as navigating to that service catalog and finding the needed form here. And so I'm prompted with this easy to use form. And since we're leveraging ServiceNow, these forms are highly configurable for any organization's specific needs. And what's important to note here is that much of this information is already in ServiceNow, as you can see. So we can use data like the requester's name, the title, the phone number, email to auto-populate the form when it's created, meaning I don't have to manually enter this information, decreasing the risk of data entry errors. As a requester, after filling in these fields, I can simply submit. After I validate some of this information, if there are things that I need to manually enter, I can. And once I submit it, that will actually kick off the doc flow. And from here on, this document lives in SharePoint and it never leaves. Now in the background, DocFlow is working to fill out the PDF with the information that was entered or auto-populated from the service catalog. And then here we are redirected to the DocFlow portal for our assignees. Now, as approvers, whether that means managers, supervisors, or executives, or simply just the requester, as I am in this case, we want a centralized place for our assignments, making our lives easier, giving us visibility into the entire flow of the form. So when a document comes my way, such as the form that was just created, I get an email and a notification in ServiceNow with a link that takes me directly to this DocFlow assignment portal, which is a single pane of glass view for any approvals or reviews or signatures needed in the form process. I have this to-do list on the left side of my screen housing all of my assignments. In the middle of the screen, I have a view of the actual PDF as my UI. Also, we have this assignment dropdown, which is sort of a chain of command in that regard, showing all the different assignees and steps this doc flow has to take, including me. You can see that I am in progress, and then the groups or the individuals that need the assignment coming up after me, such as my supervisor or some type of manager in that regard. And then we also have instructions on the right side of the screen, making it clear and simple for our users what they have to do within the form. And so if I need to actually just sign this, that is my part of that is my assignment, that is my step. I'll just, similar to what I showed you before, I'll open this in app and I will continue with my signature. I'll add my digital signature here, just like we saw previously. And once we make that save, we can close out Adobe Reader here, and we can complete our assignment in DocFlow, which would move it to the next step. And then I would take any of my other assignments coming from my to-do list on the left there. So I know we don't have too much time. That was about everything that I wanted to show you all. In short, DocIntegrator and DocFlow, they combine the strengths of ServiceNow and SharePoint, and it really gives you the best of both worlds in that regard. And I'll turn it over back to DC now.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Josh. A great demo. So as we just wrap up with just a couple slides, and we'll dive into Q&A. So just to understand, so when we look at the three sort of ways when it comes to how do we work with ServiceNow today, if you're not integrated with SharePoint, but you're storing your files there, the time to process is very long. It will take a lot of effort and a lot of time. And while implementing an external content connector through ServiceNow can provide some improvements, especially when it comes to search, it still requires indexing and running a regular index every night or whenever you have it, your admin has it set to run, to keep track of all your files. So you still come up with a significant number of pitfalls when it comes to that, especially if files are being routinely updated and changed. That search is only as good as the last time it indexed the database. So with that, with DocIntegrator, we have seamless integration, an incredible amount of efficiency gain. Processes that may take days to complete are now done in hours, if not a day. And so you see work getting done faster, processes getting accomplished sooner, approvals getting through the queue in minutes. So with that, one last slide and we'll go straight to Q&A. And again, when it comes to implementation, when it comes to really sort of a more custom homegrown, trying to develop what we're doing here, it's almost impossible to do, but just to get some sort of basic integration, it's going to take months, if not years. We have some folks who have tried to do this all custom and they still haven't gotten it to work. With basic XCC, just getting your basic search and indexing you're looking at several months of process. And with DocIntegrator, we're up and running in 2 to 4 weeks. And give you a couple key contacts within our organization for you to interface with. If you are interested in getting your hands on the demo from the ServiceNow store, you can obviously request it right through the ServiceNow store, or you can reach out to Brian directly. If you are a partner and want to start working more closely with us, feel free to reach out to Brandon. Thank you all for joining today. That concludes today's webinar.